Okay, we are recording. Can everyone see the orientation presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. There are two parts. The first part's a little bit longer than the first. Well, depending on how we're doing, we might take a little bit of a break in between part one and part two. But we'll also try to keep this engaging and interesting. So the purpose of today, just to be able to kind of meet, you all are going to be a group working together with one or two other students in terms of the mentorship program. So as we find times to meet, as we have conversations, this will be the group that you'll meet with. As I mentioned, I'll probably bring in people from the other cohorts as well, just because I think it's more interesting conversation. And you all can learn about the experiences that are already happening. You get a chance to meet faculty mentors, myself. And then we're going to spend some time really kind of thinking about what does it mean to be working and learning in contemporary classrooms. We're going to talk about professional dispositions and expectations, kind of what does it mean to be a professional student and what does it mean to be a student teacher, and look at some of the frameworks that we have in our program. And then we're going to talk about the logistics of being in a teacher education program. So the internships, what it looks like to schedule, program plans, all that kind of stuff. And then probably what I think is one of the most important parts, we're going to talk about some of the supports that we have in place that I highly recommend using whenever you have the opportunity to. We have some really fantastic people that are here to support you at different levels. And that's probably, I think, one of the best parts of our program. We've already had a chance to introduce ourselves. This is the group of the faculty mentors. And so these are people that you might end up seeing at different aspects of your program. For you all, you'll definitely be working with Sarah Woodard when you start taking some of your literacy courses. Alice, with your interest in English, you'll probably see Sarah more than the rest. Dr. Corinne Westland is one of our fantastic special education people. She's been in our teacher ed program for a very long time. She is my other kind of co-Jeffco site professor at the middle school. So she works at Carmody Middle School. So she's the site professor there. So if you're spending your internships in Jeffco, you'll probably end up having Corinne as a site professor for one semester, me for the other. Chris Carson is in culturally and linguistically diverse education. He's the site professor at North High School. So if you're saying, yes, I want to be in Denver, yes, I want to be doing high school, there's a good chance that you'll be working with Chris. Questions so far? Did everyone already get the kind of the pre-materials? Did everyone get a chance to see the Bobby LaFave video?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. What I want us to do, I want you to just take a second while I'm transitioning slides and kind of think back to kind of the things that really stuck out to you when you had a chance to watch the Bobby LaFave video. And I'm going to transfer over here. And so this is another quote that I think really has a nice connection to the work that we do in education. So, and I'm going to read it out loud. I know y'all can read, but the term community teacher denotes the accomplished practitioner in urban teaching and learning. Community teachers draw on a richly contextualized knowledge of culture, community, and identity in their professional work with children and families in diverse urban communities. Their competence is evidenced by effective pedagogy in diverse community settings, student achievement, and community affirmation and acknowledgement of their performance. And so just take about 60 seconds and just read that quote again and just kind of think about what that means to you. Okay.
Should we just jump in?
So I'm going to kind of put that chat or that question that we had there, and it's better, I think, to kind of be able to see everyone and not be obscured by the post. So just kind of given that prompt that I just put in the chat that was up there, I just want to hear from you all. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think when I read that quote and then also thinking about the video, it's really about, looking beyond the bias and the stigma that could be, that will be present, I'm sure, for a lot of the kids that we're teaching, and thinking about nurturing the potential that we see and being the helping hand that they need to get to where they want to go.
Great. What else?
I was just going to mention it feels like learning about tools and having the knowledge to help them be successful and help the diverse students succeed.
Yeah, I think like what I kind of like gather from it is like the word community teacher, meaning that you're not just like, you're not just a teacher for the students. In a sense, you're part of the community. So like whatever the community might be, Denver's might be, for example, Denver might be very different from, let's say, Texas or Florida or New York or LA. So whatever your community are part of, and whatever the challenges are, like in that community, is like what makes a good teacher and what makes a successful teacher, in a sense of like blending into the community, merging yourself into the community's problems, in a sense, because like again, like every community is different. Like not every problem is the same problem in like every area and stuff like that.
I can also add that in the video it was saying that children dream and think every dream can be true and anything is possible. And I think they need us to believe in them as teachers. And it's important to help them achieve their dreams. They just need from us.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing. Now let's talk a little bit about how this all connects to kind of what's happening in our program. And I am going to play some of these audio when it makes sense. We're going to listen to Chris. Actually, I have to make sure my audio is connected. Can I get some thumbs up when if you start hearing audio?
Let's try to conceptualize how a commitment to social justice fits into the broad goals of this program. Take a moment to look closely at this wheel graphic, which represents our vision and purpose for teacher education. Look closely at each part. At the center, the students in our P12 partner schools. Surrounding our students, the key stakeholders with which great teachers will try to engage. Beyond this center, 5 principles that are essential. Let's try to conceptualize our students, the key stakeholders with which great teachers will try to engage. Beyond this center, 5 principles that are essential to teaching and learning, and to the left, 4 essential questions. We hope you'll take a moment to examine and discuss what you notice and wonder about this conceptual framework.
And so again, we look at this wheel, you will see this wheel at the top of just about every single syllabus that you take a look at when you dive into our program. And you look at the very center of it, right? We have children and the youth that we work with. And then you'll see the wheel kind of expands and there's different things that connect. And so I'd love, one of my favorite activities to do is, especially in math class, instead of looking for the final answer, I love to kind of think of this idea, what do you notice about it? And then also at the same time, what do you wonder? And so as you take a look at, and we're going to focus on the wheel here, what's maybe a noticing that you have? And then what's a question or what's a wonder?
I've always thought that inclusiveness and really fits in with culture. and just making sure everyone feels included. And so that's what sticks out to me. I'm wondering about the learning and development theory. I've always been just a wonderer about all the theories out there. So that's what I'm wondering.
That's a really great question, and we will get there in the program fairly early on. You'll be taking, so the way that the program runs is that in your very first semester. So are you all looking at fall admit, fall start? Right. So in the fall, you all will be taking some very kind of intro courses, and when I mean intro courses, really kind of thinking about the social context of education, learning theories, things along those lines. And then once you get into your second semester, that's when you start your internships. And one of those courses is called Planning for Learning. And that's kind of initially what we called the Intro to Pedagogy course. But a group of us really thought that really the focus shouldn't be around the teacher aspect, but really more so focusing on what are we knowing about students learning. And so in that part, you'll really dive deep into not only learning theories, but also how they connect to what you're doing in your internship. Does that? Great questions. Good observations. What do we notice? What do we want?
I'm wondering about the linguistically, like what linguistically responsive practices means.
Sure. So really, ultimately, what we're going to want to be thinking about, and again, you're going to be really diving into this in your first semester, is what are the things that we need to think about depending on who our students are, right? And so we have to think about the needs of our students, whether it's connected to inclusiveness, the linguistic things that we need to think about when we're supporting each and every one of our students. All of our students have different kinds of language demands that exist, depending on whether they're multilingual learners, depending on if they have a specific learning disability, ADHD, anything that will impact their learning linguistically. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we create these practices that look at who our students are and build them around that. And so that's going to be a major focus, and really the probably one of the most important things that I think of when I think about our program.
Cool, thanks.
What I noticed here is the thing that connects all of them is teaching/learning.
Yes.
I think there are 5, yeah, and it connects all of them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would put learning first if it were me. Again, from what I said earlier, right? What are we really privileging? Are we really focused on the work that we're doing, or are we really trying to think about what that means in terms of student learning? So, yeah, but you're absolutely right. Any other noticings or wonderings?
Well, I guess we're not able to hear me speaking to myself.
That's
Can you guys
okay.
hear me now?
Yep, great.
Okay, cool. I said, I was going to say, I think what I noticed is kind of the same sort of theme in this graph, that like a teacher represents a lot of things besides a student. It represents families, community, schools, agencies. So teacher is somebody who's gonna have to wear a lot of hats and juggle a lot of things. That's what I kind of gather from this graph.
Nick, you're absolutely correct. And once you get into the program, and once you start thinking about, creating these learning opportunities for our students, we have a very specific lesson plan template that we've created within CU Denver. And you're probably going to curse it a couple of times, and you're going to say, why do we have to write so much stuff? I'm never, when I have my own teaching job, write lesson plans that look like this. And the reason being, Nick, is that we ask you to specifically explain how all of these things connect to who your students are and to what you're working with your students for them to learn. And so writing it out and having that experience in our program is really important. But there'll be a couple of times where you'll be like, I just can't write another one of these 8-page lesson plans. There is a reason. There's a reason for why we do what we do. Any other questions, thoughts, hopes, wishes, dreams? Right. We're going to listen to this one too, because I think it's good.
On this slide, we're going to spend some time talking about how you're working towards thinking about having experiences and demonstrating your learning. This teacher preparation program is more than an isolated series of courses and residency internships. The state and the university want you to have a clear vision of what teachers must be able to know and do to be successful. This slide represents the commitment we have to ensuring that your program is coordinated and coherent, and that it provides you with many opportunities to acquire the knowledge base of teaching. We plan your program beginning with the abstract, broad scope of the Colorado Teacher Quality Standards, and bring these standards down to the concrete daily work of teaching represented in the anchor competencies. This thorough planning is to ensure that you have many opportunities to learn about and practice the work of teaching, and many opportunities to think through the values and behaviors necessary to be a strong teacher for all children and young adults.
So essentially, people in our teacher education program go through, and then at the very end, we go to CDE and we say, yes, they've done all of the things that we think that they need to be able to do to get their license. And then we award you your degree, and you go to CDE with all of that, this package of stuff, including our AOK that says that you're ready to go, and then you can get your teacher license. The things that they want us to make sure that you can do are the teacher quality standards, the Colorado Teacher Quality Standards. You will never probably see those directly, but again, why you'll see the way our lesson plans are and everything are kind of built out is so that we can go back, even though you never really have to, and say this is evidence of this person doing this thing. And that's how we've actually built our essential questions, which are back here, that we'll, if we have time later, get into a little bit deeper, but you will see them again in every single syllabus and as you move through the program. And then we build learning experiences around all of those things. So you'll be creating lesson plans, you'll be creating unit plans. In your capstone course, which is the last course you'll be taking in your last semester, you'll be planning and acting and reflecting upon 3 to 5 lesson plans and an assessment that are going to be very, very deeply done. I have this particular group of students working in groups on this assignment because, and backing it up with evidence along the way. And those things are what we call our program level assessments. And the things that we use to be able to kind of assess. And then really, I prefer to look at them as tools for kind of having conversations about, this is where you are, this is what you're doing really great, these are some things that you want to work on, this is what a 5-year teacher would be doing at this point, kind of having those conversations. One of the things that we really like to talk about in this particular orientation is a discussion about professional expectations. Did you also in your folder or in your email receive a copy of the professional dispositions rubric? Does that sound familiar?
I haven't seen that yet. Also.
Interesting. Well, I'm gonna bring it up and show it to you and kind of share it so that you all can take a look at, so that we know exactly what we're talking about. And so one of the things that we're going to be using both in our courses, but also significantly focused on the work that we do in our internships, is how we think about professional dispositions. So give me 2 seconds here. Again, my computer's going very slowly. So I'm going to pop a link to this version anyway that you can view. And then I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah, definitely first time seeing this.
Okay, well, you saw it here first. And so part of the work that you do in your internship is that you're going to be assessed on this particular rubric, or definitely at least parts of this particular rubric. And then we're piloting, they may have piloted in the summer. I didn't have any teacher education courses. I took doctoral courses this summer. But you'll also be potentially taking quizzes and self-assessing yourself on some of these professional dispositions and attitudes rubric. And the reason why we think that this is a really important thing to explore is that when you're in your internship, you're essentially there in a semester-long interview. Okay? The reason why the school districts that we work with want to work with us is that they want to be able to have the first chance to work, to see who our students are when they're looking to hire. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a job opening in your particular content area the time that you're there, but making sure that you're making connections and being as professional as possible while you're in your internships or in your courses becomes a really important part of our work. And in here, we cover everything to make sure that when we're thinking about students, we have this very asset-based way of looking at them, right? Are we thinking of, gosh, these students can't do this, or gosh, these students aren't there yet, but what are the things that we need to do to be able to support them to go further? We think about things like, how do we collaborate with others? Right? Teaching is no longer kind of going into your foxhole for the day on your own, packing up, taking all of your work home with you, and then never really connecting with other people. It's very collaborative. You're often working in departments or with grade level teams, or just the friends that you've connected with at the school. So how well do you collaborate with others? One of the big ones is, how do you take feedback, right? Are you coachable? So if you teach a really good lesson and I'm your psych professor and I say, gosh, these are all the things that you did fantastically, I wonder if we start thinking about this, and you get frustrated, because who likes criticism, right? It's difficult to take, right? Then that shows that you're not necessarily willing to kind of improve your practice. And so all of these things in here in this document start to get us to think about, what are the general professionalism things that we need to be doing in our internships. And so what I'd love for you to do is to just take a second. Is everyone in there? Is there anyone that wasn't able to get in? Is everyone in there? Get into the document and pick out one thing. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because you're in there. Pick out one thing that you feel really good about, and there's something that you feel that you have a good sense of. And then pick out one thing that you think would be really great to work on. And we'll just take maybe 2 minutes. I know that doesn't give you a ton of time, but let's take about 2 minutes and let's just think about what's one thing that you would really like to work on, and what's one thing that you feel really good about, and then we'll share out. Do we need another minute or is that pretty good? All right, let's hear. What are your thoughts?
I can go first. So I think I'm pretty good at like continuous improvement and professional growth. I think from like my background in tech, like in web development, application development, sort of software development type of like thing. Pretty much I always have to keep up with latest and greatest programming languages, technologies, and it's been honestly the past, like, I don't know, I've been like, again, like I said, in tech for 10, 15 years now, and every year has sort of been like a continuous growth. And I would say my probably biggest weakness would be communication skills. English is my second language. I definitely have fears and like insecurities about how I speak, about my accent and things like that. I always think like I'm the Terminator guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger from like California guy. Like I sound like that, but like that. And yeah, I think that's it.
I can jump off of that. I think my thing I'll struggle with probably the most is reflective practice. I think I tend to just check a box and move on. It's kind of my way of functioning. As long as it's good, we'll just keep moving, and I don't take the time to necessarily reflect on what could be better, what could change. So I think that will be my room for growth. But my collaboration, I think, is pretty strong. I really enjoy working with other people, so I think that would be maybe more a little easier for me.
Great, thanks for sharing, Kelsey.
For me, I think I can always work on my communication skills, even though I'm a communications major. I just know it's something that I need to get better at presentations, and that's something I need to work on. As for commitment to student learning, I think that's definitely something I feel like I could be. Just being inclusive and respectful, that's always me. So.
Great, thanks for sharing. One of the things that that also I find comes up a lot when it comes to communication is just communication with the people that you're working with. If you're working on kind of a collaborative project with another student teacher, stay in communication. Key, our faculty, I think, are very understanding for the most part. And so if you can't get something in on time, just let them know. And most importantly, that communication with your mentor teacher, or as we call clinical teacher. If you're going to be teaching a lesson and you send them a draft of it, the first thing, sorry, my dog is very needy. And you send it to them half an hour before class is supposed to start, looking for feedback. That's not going to make them very happy. And it's probably not going to turn into good learning for your students. So yeah, great example.
Okay, I can go on. I just want to first start with hold high expectations for self, demonstrate initiative, and accept personal responsibility for the outcomes of her actions. I think I'm good for that, but my weakness is just like Nick, communication. Because again, it's the same for me. English is my second language, so I'm not just great in English. Therefore, I need to be good at communication.
Great, thank you all so much for sharing. So this is kind of a really major document that we have that we're going to be spending a lot of time thinking about in our program. As I said, it probably makes a lot of sense how this connects to the work that you'll be doing in your internships. But as I said, starting this fall, it's going to be something that's going to be coming up in your courses as well. And you'll have opportunities more than likely to kind of assess, how am I dealing in terms of professionalism in the work that I do in our coursework as well. And if I want to, and you're going to hear me say this a whole bunch, if there's any time throughout the program that you have questions or concerns about this, you can always reach out to me. And I love being able to talk with you all and be able to kind of help and problem solve.
Thank you so much.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to talk a little bit about the professional year of residency. So the work of being a student teacher, then we're going to take a little bit of a break. So probably not quite as many slides as we just went through, but still some work to do. So our professional year residency internships. So as I mentioned, it's kind of 3 total semesters, this program, as long as you kind of follow your course plan, stay on top of, the standardized testing you need to do, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the praxis, all that kind of good stuff. You're essentially here for 3 semesters. Your first semester is completely course driven. You're not going to be in classrooms at all. And then your professional year are those last 2 semesters where you're going to be in 2 separate internships, one during one semester and one during the second semester. And this is your chance where you're going to be able to really spend some time with classroom teachers. You'll get a chance to kind of work with 1 or 2 very much so specifically, but you'll also have a chance to kind of move around, meet with administrators, see how other people do. I highly recommend looking at different content areas and how they think about learning and things along those chants, and allows you to kind of build your own toolkit when we think about student teaching and learning. And so in your PDS or your professional development school that you're going to be working at, or 2 different schools mostly, these are the people that you're going to be working with. There's the university site professor, so the me type, the person that's working at the university, but also is with you during your internship. So for me, in your internship number 1, which we'll talk about in a bit, you're there 2 days a week. One of those days I'm there as well. So I'm a person that we can sit and talk to. I'm a person that will come in and kind of just observe your teaching and support you with feedback. And then at the end of the day on Thursdays, usually we do a course, we do a class, which is kind of a debrief and also just a chance to be able to talk about different topics in education and the work of being a teacher. And that's usually run by the site professor, as well as the next person, the site coordinator. So they're kind of a master teacher who we've hired that works at the school. And they're one of the people, of course, who's the really strong connection to what's happening at the school. They're the ones that place you usually with the teachers, because they're the ones that are able to kind of talk to the teachers the most. We'll talk about how that process happens as well. And if I gloss over it, remind me to talk about how you figure out where you're going and when. And so the 2 main connections to specifically your internship work are the site professor and the site coordinator. You're going to be matched up then with a clinical teacher, a CT, and they're going to be whose classroom that you're going to be spending the time with when you're doing your internship. They're the mentor. So often what that looks like is a progression of you doing a lot of observing at first, and then kind of being able to do different models of co-teaching. And some people, I mean, ultimately you'll be doing co-teaching throughout your entire experience of your internship. You won't only be teaching completely on your own. You'll be probably having opportunities to plan and work with teachers. You'll have opportunities to teach on your own, but it's always going to be kind of couched in this co-teaching model. And then that's all of you, the teacher candidates. You will hear your site professors and everyone else mix up CTs and TCs all the time. You all are TCs, your mentors are CTs. It is incredibly confusing. And so that's kind of the community that helps and supports you in the work that you do at your internship. Questions?
All right now, thank you.
Okay. Let's take a look at what this looks like across the semesters. In your first semester, so for you all, if you're starting in this fall, this will be your spring semester, starting in very early January. this is what it looks like as an intern at the site school that you're working at. And of course, this is not in the right semester mode at all. This is the ones that they gave me, but this is for, oh no, it says August or January. So yeah, so in January, you're going to start off before the semester starts. So we usually start our first week of school at CU Denver is MLK Day that week. We don't have classes or anything on MLK Day, but that's when the university starts. Your internship will start at least probably 2 weeks before that. So just one of the things to think about when you're thinking about kind of holiday plans and everything is that by the 3rd or 4th of January, you're probably going to be expected to be in your internship to start your immersion, because they want to have you have a little bit of time with your mentor teacher or your clinical teacher before the students actually get there. And then students go back to school very early. And so again, same thing happens, you know, your semester will start in August around the 22nd, I think. I think that I'm the 9th of August going to be at Bear Creek High School, starting to work with the student teachers that are starting their internships in the fall. And so we have 3 total internships. We have internship 1, 2, and 3. Your internship 1 and 2 are that first semester. So you're going to be at one school for that first semester starting in January, but it's going to be broken up and considered 2 separate internships. You're going to be getting kind of assessment and grades at the halfway point, or you'll see in the middle there in that pinkish color. I'm pretty colorblind, so I'm going to go with pink. And so you'll have that opportunity where you'll be considered an intern 1. And then after this switch week, you'll be considered internship 2. The only thing that's really different between that for you all is the expectations. So as an intern 1, you're going to be spending a lot of time doing observing of the classroom. You'll get a chance to be able to kind of do some intro activities. You know, you'll get a chance to maybe look at some grading. You'll have to, by the end of internship 1, have one at least observed official lesson that you've taught on your own. I'm going to add a caveat to that. It really ultimately depends on your clinical teacher, your CT. My first day of my very first internship, my CT, my mentor teacher, kind of talked to me about, you know, gosh, you're from Eastern Canada, great. I had a cottage. I remember the conversation like it was yesterday. I have a cottage up there. This is what we're going to do for our intro. Oh, wow, you're at Boston College. This is what you're doing. Do you know this professor? This is what we're doing in the middle of the lesson. More questions about me. Students started walking in and she just said, we talked about the lesson, go for it. And I had to teach the first lesson and it was bad. That's why I remember the entire conversation, because that lesson was a complete and total bomb. But she just wanted me to go up and just, from the very first day, teach a lesson on my own, see what it was like. That might be the case. You know, it might also be the case that you have a clinical teacher that says that you're not going to be up in front of the students, you're going to be observing for the first 3 weeks. It's really going to differ depending on who your CT is. But that first internship very much so is going to be observing and getting used to and really learning who your students are. The second semester is when you're getting into more planning, more teaching on your own. By the end of internship 2, you're going to be observed, and you'll in your planning for learning course have to create 2 lessons completely on your own that you're going to teach, and you'll be observed on those. So 2 consecutive lessons. And so that's kind of the work that you're going to be doing. Your internships in internship 1 and 2 are going to be on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And so those are the 2 days that you're going to be just at the school all day for internship number 1 and internship number 2. Questions?
So right now, from like August till January, we're going to be having classes on Mondays and Tuesdays, or am I reading this wrong?
No, your courses will really kind of be will be kind of whenever your courses that you're planning on taking happen.
Okay.
That's just kind of like an example of what the semester would look like. So when you start in January, you'll likely have courses on Mondays and Tuesdays. You'll be at your internships on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then there are often kind of seminars and things that the universities open up on Fridays. One of the things that I highly recommend you doing once you know what district you're going to be in is to apply to become a substitute teacher in that district. Because, you know, it's a lot of pressure, right? You're in a program that in theory says, you know, it's really hard to have a job, but it's not it's a program that costs money and you have to live, right? And so is that realistic? No. And so one of the things that I highly recommend doing, and I think that this comes up in a little bit, is making sure that you have your substitute license so that on Fridays, if they need a sub and you want to go in, you can get money, you can get paid to do that. If your cooperating teacher or if your CT is going off with the cheerleading team for a week to a competition, and you're at the point where you're able to take over, you can get paid for that. And so that's why it says open to sub. So in your first semester, you cannot get paid if you're just in your internship on Wednesdays and Thursdays working with your CT. It doesn't work that way. But there are times where you might be able to get paid for the work that you do. Does that bring up questions? That often does bring up questions.
I just have a question about the Pell Grants. I don't know, I saw an email about it. It was offering or said that they do offer Pell Grants during your internship semesters. Do you know, is that just with the FAFSA application or is that separate?
The best person will be the admissions kind of your advisor, because I'm a faculty member. I don't really engage with a lot of that. So I would not be the person to talk to. But we'll talk about our supports and we'll find out who it is. And there are people that can easily help and support you in that process.
Thank you.
Okay. In your second semester, you're doing your third internship, your final internship. And so what you're going to be doing is and so this will be fall. Am I doing that right? Mm-hmm. Fall, spring, first internship. Yeah. So this will be fall of the following year. Most of your courses will be done, probably not all of them. One course you'll definitely be taking is your capstone course, where it's going to be a course that's completely connected to what you're doing in your final internship. I told you about that, you know, planning lessons, enacting them, reflecting on them, thinking about assessment, all that kind of good stuff. And so that's the final course that you'll take in our program. And while you're doing that, you're in your third internship. And so in your third internship, the way that looks is that for the first half of the semester, you're probably going to be at a different school, probably. We'll talk about that in a bit too. But you'll be at your internship Wednesday through Friday. So you'll be there 3 days a week. And you'll be taking that capstone course. And you'll be doing the same thing, but again, you'll be doing a lot more of the work of building lessons, connecting to assessment, deeper dive into classroom management, all that kind of fun stuff. And then in the last half, after this switch week of your internship number 3, you're there every day. You're there 5 days a week in the school. You're probably still taking, hopefully remotely, your capstone course. You will be basically doing your lead teaching. Where you'll be taking over several of the classes of the mentor teacher that you're working with. And again, that will vary depending on who you have. You might be taking over 2 classes, but for a longer period of time, and you might start before switch week, or you might be taking over 3 or 4 courses for a shorter amount of time. That's something that you end up working out with your site professor, site coordinator, and your mentor teacher. And then when you finish that up in December, mid-December, you're going to be then going to graduation.
And then what does that look like for our cohort then, if we're finishing in December? Is it likely that we'll be able to find a position in January, or is it more realistic that we need to wait for the following school year in August?
That's a really great question. And the teaching profession is in a really interesting phase right now. So my answer prior to pandemic would have been, you'll probably be able to find a really good long-term sub position where you will just be working every single day, making the money of a long-term sub. And then you'll kind of get a chance to kind of think, well, no, this is a district I want to work in. I'm going to apply for jobs to start in August in this district or at the school, or maybe they'll say, wow, you're great. And we do have an opening that's going to open and you're going to get hired. That's all changed. And so I can't honestly say. There are lots of people getting jobs in January.
Okay.
Will that be the case the next January? I don't know. But it will not be hard for you to work once you graduate, no matter when you graduate.
Cool.
Right.
Thanks.
There are definitely openings for teachers everywhere. I don't actually know. I've been looking nationally at what kind of on average, what districts don't have ready to go yet for August. But I don't know. I haven't actually looked at Colorado, and all districts are still in need of teachers right now. And school starts in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so yeah, sorry, I wish I had a
No,
more
that's okay.
more
That's
answer, but
promising.
again, some people even had opportunities. I know that graduated in December and had a job offer, and they decided to long-term sub in the district instead to make sure that it was a district they wanted to work on, and then spent that semester really focusing on where do I want to work and where am I going to put my efforts into applying for jobs. Either should not be heard. Yeah, so as I've been kind of saying along the way, your experiences are going to be completely unique, depending on who your CT is, depending on who your psych professor and psych coordinator is. Professional dispositions are going to be key. I can't stress that enough. It's amazing how many things can kind of come up if we're not thinking about that. And then communication connected to that is really important. You'll be getting lots of emails, so making sure that you're checking your email daily. I know it seems kind of fairly archaic at this point, but that's still kind of how a lot of that communication happens. And lots of students are like, well, I checked my email last Thursday. It doesn't cut it. You need to be able to make sure that you're on top of it. Timeline for placements. So usually what happens, so for you all, sometime in the middle of the semester in August, you'll be requested to fill out a form that kind of says, what are my interests? What subject do I teach? What districts am I interested in? Who am I as I think about education? And we call those matchmaker forms. And so in November for you all, the psych coordinators, psych professors, and then the Office of Partnership staff all get together. They're not going to be very happy for me saying this, but it's called like draft day, where we just get to decide who gets to kind of work with who, because it's difficult. We have to make sure that there are enough math and science teachers to go around, and that's fairly distributed across the schools. We don't have a lot of math and science teachers that come into our program. We have to kind of think about having a proper distribution of middle school and high school. And so we just have this day where we just sit together and we plan out all of the internships for the following semester. So you'll know by the beginning of December where you're at. Will you get your first spot? Maybe, maybe not. But what's going to be really important is for you to stay in touch with people like me, because I'll be at that meeting and I can advocate for you. Your professors, the people in the Office of Partnerships. So just making sure that you're very clear and advocating for yourself, and speaking to the people that can also help advocate for you. Internships in the time of COVID, we're nowhere near out of the woods yet. It is a really interesting time. It's been fascinating because, you know, people that are studying and learning about learning right now are thinking about it very differently than people in our program 3 years ago. We've really shifted the focus in what does it mean to support learning, and what are the things we really privilege as teachers in student learning. And so for me, it's a really exciting time to become a teacher. There's a lot to it, obviously, but it's kind of a really exciting time to be able to think about these things. So that's why it's kind of, you know, some people are like, does it make sense to become a teacher now? And yeah, absolutely. I still don't know. We don't really know what's going to be happening in the fall. Most districts are encouraging people to be vaccinated. Some of them are expecting it. I don't know what will happen when everything opens up in August, but that's kind of where we're at. Please, please, please get your sub license as soon as you can for the district that you're working in. So you are in the MAT program, all in the master's program, correct?
Yeah.
I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can get a 3-year sub authorization. And then it just gives you a chance to be able to pay for some of the things that you need to pay for. I'm going to pause here. The next part of the program is really for us to be able to talk about the other supports and some of the things that you need to think about within the program. So we are going to take a break, but are there any questions before we take a break?
Clear, thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Is 5 minutes enough time? Or do you want 10 minutes? I'm fine either way.
That's fine for me.
Yeah, 5 is good.
That's good.
So let's say 17 minutes after we'll come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, folks, for sticking in so far. Okay, we're back and recording back on. Part 2. Now we're going to be talking about kind of some of the more logistics about diving into kind of the next steps, both in terms of courses, the different types of supports that we have, the practice exam, all that kind of those nitty-gritty details. So earlier we talked about who are the people that we can talk to about admissions and all that kind of good stuff. This is the advising team. They're all fantastic. Since you all are in the MAT program, your person will be Danielle Peralta. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste her email into the chat, so that you all have that in case you do have some questions that would be better answered by your advising team. But they are fantastic. They're a very thoughtful group. When we think about registering for classes, you will be, again, you have your advisor that will help kind of support you thinking about what courses you should be taking. You can always reach out to me as a support as well. If you're in STEM, even better, but I still have a really good sense of how the program runs. So if you've already had some courses at CU, your advisor will be able to help you kind of move those courses around. When it comes to registering for your internship and all that kind of good stuff, you'll be hearing from Rachel Cornelius, who you may have already had emails from at this point. She's kind of the main manager that we'll talk about pretty soon. we have a success center, and it is a fantastic resource. They are there to be able to help out and support anywhere from kind of support in taking the praxis exam. If you need help kind of thinking about organization, how to figure out your work schedule, anything and everything. They are there to help. Unfortunately, Jocelyn is no longer the math science tutor. I don't know who the new one's going to be. She's one of our recent graduates and a rock star math educator. And we actually now have a new, I just found out yesterday, we have a new director for the Success Center. I haven't met her yet. So that's why she's not up here, because it was announced yesterday. But they are a really fantastic group of people and can support you in any question that you may have. They're able to kind of be there and support. Have you all used, is Canvas a learning management system that you all have used before? Are you familiar with Canvas?
Yes.
Some yes, some no.
Nope.
So Canvas is what we use as a way to be able to manage learning at our university. I have my own, I'm sure the way that I said that kind of implies that I have thoughts about, well, managing learning. But it's the program that we use. So you'll always, for all of your courses, you will have a Canvas shell that will have most of the details anyway of the work that you do. Some people use it as the only way to kind of communicate. Other people use it as a starting spot, and they go off and do all kinds of wacky and crazy things. But Canvas is something that you will have access to, and it will be the way that you'll mostly kind of work through your coursework and your internship and stuff like that. I do want to show one of the ones that the Canvas shells that you're going to be invited to is the MAT Masters of Art in Teaching shell. Some of you may already have access to, and this is just chock full of information. It's not something you're going to be going to like weekly even, but it talks about things like student support. So where you go if you need that support. Again, internships, Rachel Cornelius, academic requirements, Sandy Mondragon, kind of where you go, who you need to talk to. There's a you're admitted now what section. So when you get access to all this, you'll have all of that information in there about your placements, all the things we're talking about here. Graduate advising, technology, and it has a whole thing about kind of thinking about the praxis. And we're going to talk about praxis in a minute, but one of the things you currently need to become a teacher in the state of Colorado is you have to take your content area, for us in secondary, praxis exam, which is kind of like a focus on like teaching in, it's both content and then teaching content exam. And the reason why that really matters is that you need to have that exam passed before you start your third internship, your final internship that we talked about earlier. So if you don't pass your praxis by the time you reach your third internship, then usually what they end up having to do is they have you do an extended second internship, and then you have another semester to try and come up with. But one of the expectations is that you complete that exam and pass it prior to your third internship. So my recommendation to you all, and then I'll definitely, this is a good place to pause. There's a slide on this down the way too, but I think it'll be really good to kind of pause and think about this for a second. Shoot, what was I going to say? Did it go? Did it disappear? Oh, yes. Start looking into the praxis now and take it as early as you can. I would take it sometime next semester before you even start any of your internships, and start there. If you pass it, you're done. If you don't, you have lots of leeway to do that. The Success Center, those Success Center people are able to support you in being able to take that exam as well. Nick.
So the deadline is technically like 2023 November or something, right?
So the deadline would be April.
Third internship.
For your third internship is going to start in August
Of next year.
of next year. They're probably going to say that the deadline would be the end of this semester.
Okay.
Prior.
No, I just saw an email. I think it said that you have to pass the praxis by like October or something of this year.
Even
I saw it.
better.
I saw it somewhere, so I started like studying and stuff. So
Good, great. Take it by October of this year.
Great.
Absolutely.
At least I
Is-
have a
is
little
what
bit
I'm
more
saying.
time.
Because, you know, sometimes people are just nervous test takers. Sometimes it takes people a few times to go through, and that's fine. It doesn't say you're a good teacher or a bad teacher at all. It's just one of the things that you need to do to get licensed here in Colorado. And
think-
so, you know, and again, as a result, that's kind of the what we need to do for our program is to say that you've completed it before the end of your second.
I think my plan was just to take it for fun right now, pretty much, like in the
I
next
mean,
month or
The
something.
only thing about that is that it costs money, right? It's over $100 per test, so you want to be careful. Other questions?
Will
Do you-
we?
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Is this like a question for maybe advisor or something? But I'm not sure which exactly praxis test I will be need to take. I think it's the 5081, I believe. But
You'll be taking whatever content area you're doing. So if you're interested in social studies, there is a social studies content practice exam. What I've been seeing people do is they've been taking their praxis as early as they possibly can. And once they pass it, sometime in their second internship or even their third internship, do a related praxis as well. So that when they're looking for a job, they can be licensed, that you will have your license to teach secondary social studies, but then you'll also be able to, in the state of Colorado, if you take the English one, become an English teacher. So often what ends up happening is people in English will take the social studies one, people in social studies will take the English one, people in math and science will take either the vice versa or a computer science one. You know, because you don't have to go back and do a master's in a different area of secondary once you have your license. From there, you're able to just kind of say, well, if I have this praxis, then I'm able to teach, in theory, that content area in the state of Colorado, which is great and a little scary, but great, mostly great.
Do you have any concept what the like passing rate is?
I honestly don't, and I'm sorry to say that, but I mean, if you study and you set yourself up for success, most people pass it.
Mhm.
One of the things to kind of think about is if there are any considerations that you need in taking the test,
Mhm.
getting that figured out, because sometimes that can take up to 8 weeks
Okay.
to get, like, in terms of like disability services or whatever's needed to help support. Getting on top of that now, if that's a consideration, is something to think about. So when I think about setting yourself up for success, right? If you say that you're going to do the praxis exam and you decide to take it in April and March, you reach out to disability services and get that all set up. In 4 weeks, it's probably not going to be done and you're going to have to take the test, or you might not, you know what I mean? So as long as you set yourself up for success and really think about the work that you need to do, most people pass it.
Okay.
And that's not that's not like minimizing or talking about failing it, because it happens all the time.
Mhm.
But as long as you are kind of thoughtful about it, reach out to the support center, reach out to your professors and stuff like that. It usually goes pretty well.
Thanks.
you guys get notified every time you take it?
Hmm?
Do you
No,
guys
oh
get
no, we'll
notified?
never know
Oh,
unless you
okay.
tell us.
I see.
No, we don't know. We don't care. The only people that care are the school, because we have to say, you know, you'll have to you'll send it to the Office of Partnerships.
Okay.
Well, now, sometimes I get texts. They're like, "Hey, I passed it," or "Oh no, can we talk about math?" So it's definitely a thing. I know that we kind of curved off for a second there, but when we get to the praxis slide, we'll be able to kind of breeze through it probably, or more questions will come up. So this is it. This is the team. This is the Office of Partnerships. The main contact is usually Rachel Cornelius. She's going to be the one that's going to be sending you out all the emails, reminding you, pestering you, because people forget all the time to do things that need to be done. So she's kind of the manager. The director of clinical teacher education and partnerships is Dr. Cindy Gutierrez, who's fantastic. She's also a wonderful support. You'll see her at a lot of the events for Internship Professional Learning Day, which you'll take probably sometime in December or January, probably December. She'll be running that. And then the coordinator is Dr. Jody Barker, who they're all fantastic people, and they're here to help and support you. Hey, look, the praxis. So again, and I will copy the link and put that in the chat as well, so that you can take a look at it. Standardized testing is still king, unfortunately, for students and people that want to become teachers. And so again, you have to do it before your final internship. So, they're saying April 1st. Wow. So that's even earlier. I know I was thinking sometime in April, but April 1st in theory. So if you start, yeah, so that's kind of the goal. And as I said, there are workshops that happen through the Success Center. There are actually within the Success Center part of Canvas, there are practice tests. And then they do study sessions as well. So this, again, the Success Center is kind of a fantastic group. And so again, these are kind of the main supports that we have. They're all in the Lawrence Street Center, which is on campus. I mean, I can say this now is probably one of the first groups that will be doing your program that might actually you might end up being on campus. I have my last group where we had our final capstone class in the end of April, and we had an event on campus, and it was the first time that any of them had ever been to campus at the last course that they had to take for the program, just because of the last few years. On the 7th floor of the Lawrence Street Center is the Student Commons, fantastic place where they have lots of computers, meeting and study rooms, teacher-owned events happen. That's where all the advisors are. The Success Center is also there on the 7th floor. So again, that group that we talked about earlier. And then the Office of Partnerships is down on my floor, on the 6th floor, the floor directly below that, where you'll have offices of Rachel and Cindy and Jody. So yeah, again, support. We have a wellness center on campus. We have student organizations. We're trying to get a student club going that's focused around education. We've got disability resources and services. There's a writing center, which is very good. Our counseling center is fantastic. We have a clinical psychology and counseling program within our School of Ed and Human Development, and a lot of the faculty spend time working and supporting students as part of their work. There are lots of people there to help you in your program. There's academic advisors, there's your faculty mentors like me, there's the site teams with your site professor, site coordinator, your clinical teachers, professors, peers, friends, family. And then specifically within the SCHD, there's writing support, math tutoring, praxis prep, food and financial aid. We have lots of opportunities for that as well, scholarships, and social emotional learning supports. And that is it. So I would love to open it up. I'd love to hear any other questions that you may have.
Does the 3-year substitute license, does that cost? Do you know how much?
So the cost is usually in the, and you'll have to check with the school. I don't think that they subsidize this. You'll have to do like background check and fingerprinting. And so that'll be the cost. So I don't believe, and I could be 100% wrong on this, but I don't believe there's much of a cost to actually apply for your sub-license, but the fingerprinting and the background check, whatever that costs.
Thank you.
So it's kind of nice to end up in the same district. Sometimes it doesn't work out when you do your internship. Sometimes you start in Jeffco and you end up in Aurora, or vice versa. But your internships, you'll have, again, 2 semesters. The likelihood is that 1 semester will be at a high school and 1 semester will be at a middle school, because that's our model. Does it always work out that way? No, for all the reasons that we've been talking about, the variability of the work of teachers. Sometimes, again, coming back to the idea of when you're in your internship, you're in a semester long interview. Sometimes in semester 1 and 2, you'll get a chance to meet the other teachers, get a chance to meet the principal, and they'll realize that at the end of the 3rd internship, they have a job opening coming up. And so the principal will email the Office of Partnerships and say, no, actually, we're keeping them for another semester because we're thinking of hiring them after that. But the likelihood is that you'll be 1 semester in high school, 1 in the middle. So my recommendation is, if you really, really, really want to teach, or you really, really think that you want to teach high school, save that for your recommendation for your last internship. So when you're doing the bulk of the work, you're really working with the students you want to work with.
Mhm.
Just
Um,
recommend.
I have another question. If we know that we need to miss a day of the internship already, like I know I have a wedding to go to in April, is that something that's going to be complicated, or something that I just need to work with my clinical teacher
Yeah,
about?
that's usually, yeah.
Okay.
Usually working it out with your clinical teacher is going to be the key. And again, that's getting really close to when you're going to be doing final observations and stuff like that. So as long as you're on top of it and you're
Yeah.
thinking about that and doing the legwork, then it's usually fine.
Okay.
The one that's really tricky that comes up quite a bit is that people still plan like winter break trips
Mhm.
and summer trips, like either late, like really late in when that happens. And then they reach out to us and they say, I have to miss all of that immersion week because I'm in Cancun.
Yeah.
And that doesn't usually go over well. Sometimes it's able to work out, but like that week where you're there working with your cooperating teacher and stuff like that is really important. But most things are able to, or as I like to say, figure outable.
Yeah.
So that's good you're thinking
Yeah,
about it now.
I have a big family trip actually planned the first week of January, and we're going to Cancun. So yeah,
No,
we're gonna,
I did
yeah.
not come up with that example. Holy smokes.
Oops.
So yeah, I guess that's something that I can start working on, communicating.
Yeah. As soon as you know your internship, just kind of talking with them immediately. I can't believe I just pulled that out of my head.
That's why I had to mention it.
Everything is figure outable, Kelsey, and most people are pretty reasonable. We did have one situation where one of the teachers that I work with at Bear Creek was just like, yeah, nope, they're not working with me then. I was like, oh, okay, that's not usually what happens. We can usually figure it out. But that just means that you'll probably have to, as early as you can, get in to meet with your CT. And most people are pretty reasonable.
Great, thank you.
Other questions, thoughts, hopes, wishes, dreams?
I have a question about financial stuff, which might be a better question for a financial advisor or something like that. But I'm just wondering if FAFSA, if there's a deadline for FAFSA for our cohort, or we just have to do it when we do it.
I think you just have to do it when you do it. But again, that's not my area of expertise at
Yeah.
all. I
Okay.
apologize.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's difficult, right? Do you want someone running the orientation that knows
Yeah.
about the financial stuff, or do you want someone that knows about the program? Or it's, so we have this new model where it's the faculty mentors that do the orientations now, which can be helpful with some insights and not with others.
Yeah, always.
I think how the FAFSA works is there is a deadline, but afterwards they still have a lot of money left over to help out other places. So even if you apply later on, they'll still be able to help
Okay.
you.
Are you applying right now? Do you know about that deadline?
I already applied. I don't remember when the deadline was. I think it was like March or something
Oh, okay.
like that. So yeah, I mean, I've also haven't finished my FAFSA before until August, and I still got support. So
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you.
And to top it off, I'm also not an American citizen and haven't gone through and done this on my own ever. So I'm like the least helpful person with this conversation.